Hey guys, I'd like to welcome you to the Kortex Media Podcast, where we navigate the fast-paced world of automotive and more. I'm your host, Corson Schmidt. Here today, I have Howard Becker. Howard is the founder and CEO of Becker Automotive Design, a premier luxury vehicle customization company based in California. Howard's company serves an elite clientele, includes head of state, celebrities, professional athletes, and top business executives across more than 25 countries. Some you may know: Tom Brady, Mark Wahlberg, Dr. Dre, Vin Diesel, Steve Harvey, Sylvester Stallone, and more. Known for an unmatched craftsmanship, cutting-edge technology integration, and uncompromising safety standards, Becker Automotive Design has earned Robb Report's prestigious Best of the Best award for nearly 2 decades. With a background that includes a BA and an MBA from University of Southern California, Howard leads his team in delivering bespoke mobile offices and secure luxury vehicles that redefine on-the-road productivity and comfort. It's great to have you on, Howard.
Thank you, Corson. I appreciate your time in your interview.
Hey, no worries. I'm glad to speak to you, especially with everything you've done with all the celebrities and the vehicles that you've built. But to dive in, let's start talking about kind of what inspired you to get into the luxury vehicle customization industry.
Well, I mean, you follow what you think is a good market segment, right?
For sure.
And no matter what you do in business, the idea is serving a market segment by fulfilling their need.
Yeah.
Taking your eye off of that ball, leads you into a no man's land pretty quickly. Belief in a product is one thing, certainly, but getting it verified by people that actually buy it, is the brass ring.
For sure.
And then as they buy it, your ability to listen becomes all important.
Mm-hmm.
And so as you react to the marketplace, to people's comments, criticisms, applause, whatever, you build on that. And so one step at a time, you find your way. That's all important. I don't know a better way to say that. And there's a lot of times throughout my automotive career, whereas people have said, can you do this? And so my first reaction is, why do you want to do that?
Yeah.
And maybe my second reaction is, no. But I've learned how to bite my tongue, my lip, all at the same time, and say, and listen, and then try to figure out, can I do that?
Yeah.
Now, within, the boundaries of U.S. federal safety regulations, ethics, to some degree, thought of who else might like that, in a sense, even though it's fuzzy at the beginning. I do my best to apply myself, learned how to do that, right? Learned how to come over the initial resistance reaction that comes from within me.
Yeah.
Why do you want to do that? That's a crazy idea. And over the years, we've done those things that pretty amazing people have brought to the table, whether they're celebrities or not. And after we're done with them, Corson, we kind of stand back and rub our eyes and come to the conclusion of, hey, that was a pretty good idea. And then once we've done it, and God willing they're happy with it, we take complete credit for it and offer it to the next person.
Yeah.
Right? Say, this is a Becker Automotive innovation. And so I would love to take credit for all the things that we've done over the years and all the things that you see have morphed into our product line and our offerings. But in all honesty, they've been inspired by customers who are much smarter than I am, much more talented than I am, and much more accomplished than I am. They are really important, great people. And generally speaking, they're not making suggestions about what they want, especially in their automotive needs, that are superfluous to their need.
Yeah.
They address their need, in more profound ways than I can imagine. What is the need of a billionaire? What is the need of a CEO? What's the need of a hedge fund manager? What's the need of a governor of a state? What's the need of a king of a country? And so I shut up and I listen. And so
Sure.
I think that's a key to success in any business, honestly. If you stop listening, you get in trouble because things change all the time.
Yeah.
And what they bring to the table and what they're privy to is way ahead of where I'm at. No matter how accomplished I am, there's people more accomplished than I am, and I'm trying to serve them. So their IT staffs, their need for privacy, encryption, for comfort, for Zoom calls, for using every moment of their time, to be productive, is really the key, and that's our mission.
That's awesome. And it's super cool that you actually listen to your customers and you use their designs for everything else, because then you're building it how your customer wants it. You could say, this is how we build it, and give them exactly kind of how you build it. They're not going to be happy, and no one else is going to want your product. So it's nice that you guys are listening to your customers, giving them exactly what they're looking for, and doing little tweaks to even kind of their own custom design, I'm assuming, as well.
Yeah, of course. And that's easy because once you've built out the structure, then fitting their customized personal tastes into it within reason.
Yeah.
I haven't gold-plated the interior of any of them, teasing aside, but within reason, they have great tastes. And, they have airplanes.
Yeah.
They've got beautiful homes. They've got offices. They've got multiple homes, usually. They've got boats, yachts, whatever. But they're privy to things that go beyond what I'm privy to. And they work with designers. Oh, and have I mentioned the wives? Or maybe the wives are the driving force in some of this case. And this is tasteful, and that's tasteful. And hey, here's a picture of so forth. And can we do something like that? Or, whatever. But those are the fun parts. I mean,
Sure.
the cosmetic tastes, the interior design to some degree, the choice of materials, those are things that cater, to their comfort zone. And if they get in a vehicle of ours, not only is the function of all the electronics and other details, fundamentally important, ride quality, air quality, etc. But if they're delighted with regard to the interior ambiance, it's relaxing.
Sure.
I feel good in here. And if they feel good in here, then the rest of what follows becomes much more amicable.
For sure.
Much more, fitting to their ability to be productive, because distractions go away, if you will, and people enjoy that experience. So that's the key. If you can hone in on that, if we're building one for you one day,
Yeah, exactly.
I'll ask you, are you going to do these interviews on the move? And you'll say, yeah, I've got so many of them lined up that I can't afford to go from the home to the studio, or from, one interview to an office or whatever.
Yeah.
Let me use that 45 minutes productively. And you know what? You may not be doing an interview, although you may be in the car, because we do Zoom calls that are amazing, and high definition cameras and mics and all the rest of it. But you may be editing. Right? You have all those tools. You've got a wireless keyboard. You've got a big screen.
Yeah.
And so you're not wasting a moment of your time. So when you become the podcast king of Canada and beyond, maybe North America, right?
You bet. That'll be me.
Every moment of your time will be invaluable to you, and probably monetarily, very important.
Yeah.
Not to mention, the effect you have on the people that are working for you and the people that are around you. So that's the goal.
That's awesome. I'm super excited. I can't wait to come pick up my Escalade in about 2 years' time. But no, it's totally true. It gives the it gives CEOs, it gives owners, it gives anyone who has a vehicle time and a comfortable spot to actually work, and there's no distractions. There's no one coming up to the vehicle because no one's really going to recognize. No one's going to know they're in that vehicle, so they can really stay focused and work inside this vehicle while they're comfortable, and it's everything that they've wanted. But before we get into a little bit more, I just want you to tell the audience a little bit more, kind of who you guys offer, what area you guys usually serve, and where you guys are located yourself.
Sure. Well, we're located in a city called Oxnard, California. It's on the coast between Malibu and Santa Barbara. Okay. So not a bad area to run a business. I grew up in this area, or actually South Bay, and went to school at USC. And so after graduation, I took a job as business consultant, so to speak. We were selling pension and profit sharing plans and all the products that go into them, and knocking on doors of small to medium-sized businesses. And so I'd come in and I'd say, Corin, your business has grown to the point, whereby if you need a tax shelter, this is a really good way to do it. Before IRAs, before 401ks, really. And so it was all done retirement plans and profit and profit sharing and pension plans. And so if we set this up, you can do this. You can buy stocks, you can buy bonds, you can buy life insurance, you can do a bunch of different products, and you can accumulate them tax-free. Sound familiar? All right, so to today's, approach is a little different, but that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I would have conversations with small business owners or medium business owners, and of course I would want to find companies that were profitable. And if they had enough sales, they were even better because they could buy more of the product to go into the profit and pension sharing plans that we'd help set up for them. Because I just received my MBA, some of the conversations with the owners came around to, that's all terrific, Becker, but, we really need to do some marketing, or you really need to do some international import-export exploration. Mm-hmm. We really need to do an SBA loan. We really need to do some receivables financing. We really need to do some work on HR. And, of course, because I just received my degree, I knew all the answers. There was nothing I didn't know, right?
Yeah.
In my mind. Young and brash, have you been there? So I would say, look, I think it can help you with that, but it doesn't really fit my job responsibilities. So I could help you with these things after hours, so to speak. I'd fulfill my commitment, my job responsibilities, but I'd work for you after hours and on the weekends and carve out little lunch times to have some meetings and whatnot. And I wish I had my car with my Zoom call meetings, but that was before that. So, I could have been a lot more productive. Nevertheless, they say, good, what do you want for that? And I say, well, let's do a retainer fee of X per month, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I wound up with a half a dozen clients paying me more than I could make on my job.
Yeah.
So, I got a little over my head because I found out I really didn't know everything, even though I had a little door-knocking ability. So I went back to the MBA program at USC, and there was a professor there who taught the first class in entrepreneurship at USC. Okay. Before that, there was now it's a big major everywhere, right?
Yeah.
But it was the first one. And I'd taken his class, and I was inspired by it. And I said, look, here's what's happening. You want to help me? He says, well, sure, I can do that, and still teach my classes. And I said, okay. And so I would drag him into some of the meetings and have him do some of the spade work. And all of a sudden, we got more popular. So I resigned from my job as a business consultant. He spent more time with me. He brought in a couple colleagues, one PhD from Stanford, a couple of talented guys, and we began to grow our business. Lo and behold, we got so busy that he took a leave of absence from teaching at USC.
No way.
And we grew the business. And so it was, pretty exciting, and it was a lot of fun. And after about 5 years, he and I had a falling out. And we decided, okay, he'll take some clients, I'll take some clients. I know what I'm doing now, so to speak. But at the same time, I was a little disenchanted with what I was doing in terms of wearing suits and riding elevators and all the rest of it. Somehow, perfectly didn't fit me.
Yeah.
And so at that point, you begin to evaluate, what am I going to do going forward? What do I want to do? And my father had a little radio shop near LAX in a city called Hawthorne. It was a relatively black community, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And he was selling car stereo, and it was just when cassettes started to come out.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm dating myself, but goddamn. And he and my mom were, running it, and had a couple employees. They were behind the eight ball. They're all their life, but they gave me a great life. They did everything they could to bring myself and my brother in good position. And so, recognizing that he needed help, and recognizing that I didn't want to do what I was doing anymore, and loving cars, and loving music, I said, "Dad, I want to help you. I think I can help you." And he said, "You schmuck. you got your degree in business and you want to come to work in the radio shop." And so I said, "Yeah, but I think I can help you and Mom, and I love cars and I love music, and just give you a shot." So he thought I was there just temporarily, like a perch, that, find something else to do. But I began to, say, okay, what can I do? What can I do to apply my marketing skills, my business skills? What would I do if I was consulting the guy who was trying to do this, right?
Yeah.
So, the wonderful thing about a black community is the love for music.
For sure.
Is second to none.
I mean,
second to none. And so the young guys would come in with their cars, and they would say, "Hey, what can we do?" And, to get better music. And the music and cars were crappy. And so I began to take apart home speakers very early on. Yeah. JBL's was the brand. I'd take apart mid-ranges and tweeters and woofers. Very early car stereo amplifiers were coming out. And I began to figure out how to put them in cars.
Yeah.
Guess who became a very popular white guy in that neighborhood?
I bet.
They just loved me. And I got music, and, I needed to make it sound like music, so I would do things to equalize the sound, and cars are not great sound environments. The sound resonates, the window glass is hard, et cetera, directionality, a lot of things that I was learning about music. Well, after about a year and a half of doing this, and the business really grew, popular lines around the block in the mornings and whatnot, especially on Saturdays, we began to grow to more employees. One day, a Rolls-Royce pulls in. Now, this is an area between Inglewood and Hawthorne. And I don't know if you're familiar with that neighborhood, but back in the day, there was a lot of really interesting characters, right? And a lot of cash flowing, and a lot of, stuff going on.
Yeah.
So, driver gets out of the Rolls Royce, and he opens the rear door, and out walks Stevie Wonder.
Really?
Right? Yeah, I said that was my reaction.
Holy
really.
cow.
Holy cow. Couple other choice words. And they took him by the hand and led him up, and I walked out, and I'm like, yeah. Hi, Mr. Wonder. And I said, "Howard, I've been hearing you do great work in cars. I'd like to, talk to you about it." So I brought him into the showroom. I'd created a little car stereo display, and we sat in there. We talked about music.
Yeah.
Boy, talk about humility, like, what do I know about music compared to this guy? Story of my life. And so, in other subjects here, I'm doing this with people today who dwarf me in terms of their knowledge. And
For sure.
Kind of stuff. So, he allowed me, and I said, "Yeah, I want it in my car." Great. So, they had the Rolls brought back in, and for the first time, we were tearing apart, a very expensive luxury car, and figuring out how to outfit it with speakers and amplifiers and music that would sound like music and wouldn't destroy the car at the same time. By the way, in the 80s, probably every dead battery in Beverly Hills was my fault. We were learning the hard way. There were no manuals. And so alternators and, electrical draws and, relays and all that stuff we had to learn. And then we had to learn how to differentiate between our product installations and factory circuits, so that if there was a problem, a dealer could identify that. Otherwise, it was all on us.
Yeah.
But standing behind those products was everything, right? If there was a problem, see me first,
Yeah.
and I'll take the responsibility. Now, there's another key for business. If customers begin to understand that you're responsible and that you'll stand behind your work and that there's a decent chance you might get it right, they'll come back. They'll trust you. All of us, especially wealthy people, have been taken advantage of over time, right?
For sure.
They hear a lot of good stories,
Yeah.
but they get head shy because not everybody, even with a good idea, will stand behind their work.
Yeah.
And so that was the second, besides listening to a customer, the second rule, if you will, principle of good business: take care of that guy or gal. Don't even give them a bit of hesitation.
Yeah.
And if there is hesitation, that's great, because if you can prove that you're otherwise, that you're going to fulfill it, you've now just bonded a relationship. And that bonding, you can't buy. I mean, that is a result of coming through a problem on their behalf.
Yeah.
Your behalf too, from a selfish standpoint, but on their behalf, properly. And then you've got a chance for a business model that is going to grow legs. And it grew legs. So Stevie Wonder was pretty happy, and guess what? Here came Berry Gordy, and here came Chaka Khan, and here came Michael Jackson, and here came, and here came, and here came, and here came, right? And so in this little border ghetto area called Hawthorne, just south of Inglewood, you'd drive down the street after a couple of years, and you'd look over at our little shop, and there was Rolls Royces and Mercedes-Benz and BMWs and Jaguars. It's like, oh man, this ought to be the drug capital of the world, right? But customers would send their cars down. And so after that continued to grow, that customer base began, the black musicians began to talk to the white musicians.
Yeah.
So here came Cher, and here came Barbra Streisand, and here came, and here came, and here came, and here came. Rod Stewart sent down the first turbo Porsche I got to work on.
No way.
930. And then another one came in. And so I was like, I want that car.
Yeah.
So eventually I've got them. I have one. So anyway, the affection for cars, for the people, and for music, I had to be very attuned to music. Yeah. So then the next step was how to get the music better. And I hired a professional sound studio engineer who had been working with something called a 12-volt parametric equalizer.
Yeah.
Now, parametric equalizers is what they do in the back of a studio, right, with all the knobs.
Yeah.
Because that identifies resonating frequencies. It allows you to cut them or boost areas that have holes in them.
Yeah.
To move through the frequency scale, to tune front speakers separately than rear speakers, separately than a subwoofer, and then to put them all together and get a soundstage which sounds accurate and beautiful. Yeah. So these guys, weren't interested in what, some of today's kids do, boom, tss, and that's all the drama, they want. But they wanted to hear real vocals. They wanted to hear real beautiful high notes. Yeah, they wanted bass, they wanted depth, but they wanted to sound like they were in their studio. Why? Well, because they were making their living by creating wonderful sound. It wasn't just that they were enjoying the sound, but they were serious about it. So going from one studio to another, I remember sitting in the back of an RV that Streisand was using to move from one studio to another, and she would listen to her music at home and also in between, but wanted to do that, and have equal hearing. And boy, what an ear for music she had. Unbelievable.
I bet.
And so trying to tune things right, trying to get things perfect, good luck, but but having a sound studio engineer and having the ability to do it on a 12-volt basis, began to really get people happy in that. So then the music guys started talking to the movie guys. Yeah,
and with the tuning, would every system not have to be tuned to kind of their own spec, because everyone listens to their music to a certain tune, or was everyone kind of...
No. I mean, they might make I'll give you a story about Burt Bacharach.
Yeah.
but if you got the music accurately tuned, right?
Yeah.
They were pretty happy because that was the foundation or the basis.
Yeah.
Now they might say, "Hey, add some more bass."
Yeah.
Snoop Dogg was pretty good with that.
I bet.
So, but
That's so
it was
cool.
the accuracy, it was the crispness, the clarity, the openness of the voice. You wanted enough lower range to go with a higher range.
Yeah.
You didn't want it screechy. You didn't want it hurt. You wanted the bass not to go to hit hard, but not to travel. And let me talk to you about what travel was. So there was a songwriter named Carol Bayer Sager, great songwriter, and she was married to Burt Bacharach. And for his birthday, she said, "I'm going to buy you. I'm going to buy you a surprise."
Okay.
So she bought him a brand new Jaguar sedan, and she sent it to me for a sound system.
Yeah.
So we did a sound system, and if you remember the older Jaguar sedans, they had a rear seats, trunk, and a rear window that was kind of cupped. And we put the subwoofers in the trunk, firing through the package tray. So after he got the car, I got a call. "Mr. Bacharach would like to talk to you, Howard." It's from the dealer. He says the bass travels. And they say, "How do we, what do you do?" I said, "The whole car travels. I don't mean the bass travels. Let me find out what that even means." So I get a call. "Mr. Bacharach wants to talk to you." "Hello, Mr. Bacharach." He says, "Howard, the bass travels. I like the sound. I love the car. What a huge gift. Thank you. But the bass travels." I said, "Mr. Bacharach, I'm not sure. May I come and sit with you in the car?
Yeah.
And you can describe to me what you're hearing." Well, what was happening is, and what he was describing, when the bass notes went off the rear window, if you took your knuckles and knocked on the rear window,
Yeah.
it would make a tone, right? And the tone wasn't real low, wasn't real high either. It was a resonating frequency.
Yeah.
So when the bass excited that windshield, it added to the sound of the music what a tone that went beyond where the bass note should stop.
Yeah.
Now, a musician, composer like Bacharach would kind of know where the drum should stop.
For sure. Especially his own music.
Yeah, his own music, plus, he was world class. Beyond, So how am I supposed to... But so he began to describe what he was meaning by the bass travel.
Yeah.
Went beyond where the note should stop. So I was able to cure that, all right, by some of the tuning stuff.
Yeah.
So you learn, you listen, and then you do your best, all right? And then step by step, you get it better and better. And of course, the next guy came in and he said, "Boy, the bass sure sounds great in my car. Thank you." And I said, "Yep. That's all my doing." So we take credit. But anyway, teasing aside, that's how, step by step you get better. So to continue the story, we sold the property that we'd purchased after a while in Hawthorne and bought a place just south of Beverly Hills, a street called La Cienega, to be closer to our customer base.
Yeah.
And we began to do the work for all the car dealerships up there as well. So people would come in and they'd say, I like this Mercedes. So do you want the windows tinted? Do you want the wheels chromed? Yeah. Do you want the stereo upgraded? They'd say, "What?" Because in the 80s, if you ever looked at a speaker in a Mercedes, it was about 3 inches in diameter.
Yeah.
And that was it. Nice radio, but... So... we would get a lot of work, to say the least. And we would meet more people and more people. And then after a while, we cut off the dealers. We were just too busy. But during the 90s, if you remember, the SUV craze began.
Yeah.
And it was because General Motors produced the first Suburban that wasn't a rattle trap.
Yeah.
And then Ford came out with their Expedition and so forth, and everybody. And so it wasn't that everybody had to sell their Ferrari or Mercedes or Rolls or Jaguar. It's that now they had to have an SUV.
Yeah.
And if you remember the SUVs, they were nice. They were craze. They served some degree of discretion on the, and they also, were fun, and they had lots of people in them and so forth. So, but the carpets were crappy. The leather was an imitation of leather for the most part.
Yeah.
The dealer would tell the customer, "Would you like a wood kit, for it?" And they'd say, "Sure, put that in." They'd pick it up and they'd see vinyl stuck with 2A tape on the dash. when they're used to their Bentley, right?
Yeah.
And so next thing I know, they said, Howard, we want a better music system in here, but we also, what is all this other stuff? Can you
Yeah.
upgrade it? Like my European luxury car. So we began to do that, and one thing led to the other because we understood Bentley interiors, we understood Mercedes interiors, we understood real veneers, we understood how to put a speaker system in without making a European luxury car look junky, et cetera, et cetera. So things began to morph, and at one point we had a customer come to us and say, look, can you take one of these SUVs and put a center divider in between the passenger and driver area front and the rear,
Yeah.
so that the principal could sit in the rear in privacy. My first reaction is, why do you want to do that? You can rent a limousine or something. They said, because we want, we have paparazzi chasing us around. We want privacy. We want discretion. And by the way, make it look like our Bentley in back and put in all your cool electronics. So at that point, flat screen TVs were just making an appearance.
Yeah.
They were small, but and they were a fortune. And our music systems were amazing. And they were having, they were enjoying themselves back there, but there was privacy. Phones had just begun to poke their heads out of the sand.
Yeah.
And so there was more and more reason for people to like that. And a lot of them were being driven anyway. So we did that. And as we were doing it, we had a security firm see what we were doing, somebody we knew. And they said, Howard, can you do a couple of these for us, but we'd like them armored. And I said, what? Why do you want to do that?
Yeah.
And they said, there's a couple of reasons that we need that from time to time. And so I said, but I don't armor, but I'd worked on a lot of armored cars. And because there were some that came in. And so when we do a car like that, we'd strip them down to nothing and build them back up.
Yeah.
So we understood, said, I'll give you my security people. They'll tell you what materials needs to go where. And so we did that. And when we were finished with that, it was like, well, not everybody needs that, but the gestalt, if you will, where somebody could pick what they need at different levels. If they needed, protection, great. If they didn't, great. But they're building blocks.
The options
so all
there.
of a sudden, and so all of a sudden, this began to make a lot of sense to us. So, and it became, we became taking quite a few jobs. So the property that we had on La Cienega wasn't sufficient anymore, and I began to advertise in the Rob Report, which is what you mentioned, and people began to come in from around the United States. And asked for things like that. So we sold the property on La Cienega, and we moved to where we are today. And the advantage of that, it's an industrial park. We have 3 facilities. We've got lots of room. We don't put our name on the building because we don't want people just dropping in, there's the sensitivity of some of the cars and projects we're working on and so forth. But it allowed us to expand. It also allowed me to, I lived in Malibu during that period, to not have to drive into the crazy traffic of LA, which was miserable.
I bet, yeah.
Just has gotten worse. God bless them. So we kept growing, and we began to, collect more customers nationally and internationally, and still, United States domestically is our biggest market. But we have a lot of customers in Manhattan, a lot of customers in Florida, a lot of customers in Texas, a lot of customers in the Bay Area, a lot of customers in Seattle, all the hubs that you can imagine, or people like you who have to work every moment of the time to keep up with their organizations and the people that are depending upon them need their help. So it's not just a luxury good. Right? It needs to feel luxurious because that's this is nice, And if I have guests with me in the back of one of these cars, it's an inviting environment.
For sure.
We can. I've had my cars called deal closers. You've got that person right there, right?
Yeah.
And let's call the pro forma up on the big screen. If we need to get the attorney on the phone, we can.
Yeah.
If we need the investor to travel next with us, we go from project to project. We can go from development to development. We can go from, et cetera, et cetera. So depending upon their business, they become very productive. And safety, whether it's exterior discretion,
Yeah.
or whether that's not the issue, but there's need for more protection, or if that's not the case, it's productivity. So, what's the issue? Now, we still have Dr. Dre as a great customer.
Yeah.
So he might say, this is all cool, I want to be, and by the way, knock me out with the music system, Becker. Of course.
Yeah,
We just delivered one to LeBron. He's like
That's so
trying to
cool.
drive from his home in West LA to Crypto Center. The traffic is amazing. So he
Yeah.
needs to relax. He needs to enjoy, but he also might want to call up a playbook or
For sure.
or watch the opposing team on the way there, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's a matter of all of that across the board. And, as you can imagine, Wall Street types,
Yeah.
and I mean this lovingly, we have a lot of attention deficit response types. They're always on it. I
Yeah.
mean, every moment of their day is like, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-dum, and they're unbelievably productive. And the people that they affect are very dependent upon their productivity, and they're responsible types, and they carry that with them, not only for their own gain, but very much often it's you feel the responsibility in them come out in, I need to do these things,
Yeah.
and not waste time.
For sure.
So that's the driving force.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
I love it. I love your upcoming. How you started with your parents' company after being super successful on your own with your teacher, and then coming to your base and your actual passion, back to the automotive industry. And
Yeah, well,
that's
passion
super
is
cool.
important, but those founding principles: listen,
Yeah,
and make sure you take care of them.
for sure.
Do the best you can, and then listen again.
Yeah.
And really perk up your ears if there's any trepidations.
For sure. Yeah, and you mentioned in the 90s when the SUV started coming out, that was the new trend, right? Everyone got the SUVs. What major
Yes.
what major trends are you seeing right now that are kind of shifting the industry?
Well, the vans have grown a lot
For
in
sure.
our segment, right? That's something that didn't happen before Mercedes-Benz began to bring them in.
Yeah.
We would do some, Ford Econolines that were pretty nice. Michael Jackson had one,
Yeah.
pretty cool. But they were always in the American consumer image, probably Canada's also, right?
Yeah.
A family conversion van.
Yeah.
Hard to shake that. But once a 3-star grill got on the road, oh, I can have that in my driveway. That's allowed.
Yeah.
I can be in that. So that began to change, open up another area for us.
Yeah.
And we were very early on with that, maybe the first in the United States to do luxury conversions with the other elements that I've described in those. We've had people follow us. But there's different market segments, right? We're very upper end. So, a lot of people wouldn't spend the money that it takes to get one of ours and maybe not have quite the need. But our customer is like, if I need it, in the scope of things, it's not that expensive.
Yeah.
So, given the utility and so forth. And so we became what's called a master upfitter by Daimler, both domestically and internationally. And so we would, do these things, and we still do them. And the advantage of them is that, they're somewhat discreet because the outside doesn't need to look any different than the one next to it.
Yeah.
But a little nicer maybe, but nothing crazy. And the interior can hold more passengers than we can get in an SUV, even if we lengthen that SUV.
Yeah.
And so having family, having a business group, having the ability to have more people on board for whatever the purpose, serves the flexibility for a lot of folks. By the way, if you're going from West LA to Crypto Center to watch a basketball game, and the game starts at 7 or 7:30, and you're on the freeway at 6 or 6:30, and you need to use the bathroom, big problem.
I bet.
Getting off and going to find a public restaurant with a restroom isn't that easy.
I bet. No.
And for some of these people, celebrities or well-known people, or people that have risk assessment in their life and security is an issue, you don't want to do that. So having a good quality bathroom on board, no pun intended, but it can trump a lot of things.
It's definitely something that could be super handy, I tell you. Even if you're not traveling far, like even if you're traveling short distances, but you're traveling a lot, you never know, you might need one, right? And then you got one on board.
Yeah, and if you've got multiple guests on board, that need becomes, or possibility of the need becomes multiplied.
Yeah.
So they're becoming more popular, if you will.
Yeah.
And so you can't do that in an SUV, no matter it doesn't work.
Yeah.
But in a Mercedes-Benz Sprinter van, we can do a very nice job of that.
That's cool. That's awesome. And that's kind of where you see the luxury automotive market heading right now, is more towards the Sprinter vans.
No. There are people who would much rather be in a Cadillac, ESV, or the like, because they are, all-wheel drive. They're lower to the ground. They have lower center of gravity. They have an amazing ride quality. They've got an exterior ambiance, which is pretty cool. Although we do them in Suburbans and Denali Yukon XLs for people that want to be a little lower key than ESV, and they have some really nice advantages. So it's a matter of, what would you like us to build for you, Corin? You said 2 years? It takes me a year to build one. So, well, you better start thinking about, what you need, or what you would want, or what's right for you and your family and your tastes. So that's the key. And then the rest of it is, quality of the interior, the luxuriousness, the luxuriousness of the seating, the comfort level. Can I take a 20-minute power nap easily? And still be safe with a 3-point seatbelt? Can I get on my Zoom call without the hassle we first had to get the mic working? And how good is the internet? And by the way, Starlink is the new kid on the block, and boy, is that working well. And et cetera, et cetera. What do you need so that you can run your life productively, and go to dinner with your family when you need to, and be in privacy and security and so forth. Now, doesn't mean you sold your Ferrari, right, or your 930, or your turbo Porsche, right? God forbid. But you've got this thing as your workhorse, and that's how they view them. This is my workhorse, and so that's the mission. And where is it going? Good question. Well, let's look at this vision.
Yeah.
Our customers are wealthy. And they can afford drivers as well as our vehicles.
Yeah.
Right? Where's a big portion of the automotive world going in the next 10 years in your mind, Orson?
A lot's pushing towards electric and autonomous vehicles as well.
Okay, so let's put electric aside for a moment. Because what we do within reason, although chassis are important, what we can use, it doesn't matter what the drivetrain is. It can be hydrogen, it can be electric, it can be gas, it can be diesel, right? As long as we have a chassis that we can do what we need to in without killing the battery. So you don't need a driver anymore. So what are you going to do? You going to sit like a bump on a log, and do your cellular prayer stance, or you're looking at your phone every moment with your head back. So again, can you decide? There's only so much you can do on a smart. Now you have a tablet.
Yeah.
Okay, you can do that. The light coming in from the windshield and the distractions from traffic, fatiguing.
For sure.
What do I need that for? What do I want to do?
Yeah.
What would I do with my tablet? What would you do with your tablet? Well, you might work,
Yeah.
right? Do your emails. You might enjoy news, maybe a music video,
Yeah.
maybe a movie, maybe, There's all those things, right? Well, let's put a center divider in it, and let's create a compartment in back.
Yeah.
And then when you arrive, instead of "Are we there yet?" it's going to be "We're there already." Right? And let the car do the work. And so,
Yeah.
is that going to happen immediately? No. Is everybody going to want to be in an autonomous car immediately? No.
No.
And will autonomous cars take over every bit of everybody's transportation issues? No.
Yeah.
And will wealthy people especially, still want personal drivers?
Definitely.
Right? And is there some security in that possibly? And do they know where to drop them off and pick them up and so forth and so on?
Yeah.
So that market's not going away, but a lot of people that may not be able or want to, or maybe autonomous car makers might want to offer an environment where people get in and say, "Oh my gosh, this is unbelievable.
Yeah.
What a ride. What was I able to do here?" And so, to me, the incorporation of some of the principles that we've pioneered and continue to work with are transferable
Mm-hmm.
into that human experience, which at some point might become a need
Yeah.
and even a competitive advantage. So when you talk about where's the future of the automotive industry going, I can't answer it for every segment,
Yeah.
but I would say that there's a growing segment in autonomous driving, and what the human beings who will be passengers in that environment might enjoy.
Yeah.
So am I going to call, when I call for my ride, am I calling that company or that company or that company?
Yeah.
And how are they competing for my business? Do I want to be in the back of a Waymo or a Tesla, or does that matter? Or do I want to be in the back of one of those things? And so, to me, I see it as a natural, because it's just, a human tendency to really enjoy those things rather than just sitting there on a tablet or a
For
smartphone.
sure. Yeah. No, and especially as a business owner, like you said, the distraction going by the window is not going to help.
Yeah, so electric curtains, or tint changing electronic glass.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of different things you can do. But anyway, we'll see where all that goes.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think sooner or later that will seep into the offerings.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's going to take a while, just because I feel like the whole road, all the roads are going to have to be filled with the autonomous cars for it to actually work as safely as it can. Because if you have some people still driving manually, it might mess with the computer systems of these autonomous cars, because if they're all connected in a certain way, it'd be way safer. But that's just my opinion. And,
Well, your opinion's probably right, but that probably resonates in the people that are trying to make autonomous cars.
yeah,
So guess what? They're working really hard on the smart cars, the cars to be smart enough to know that when you blast by with your Porsche, it recognizes it far enough off to where it's not going to disturb its driving pattern,
yeah,
or it's going to alter its driving pattern. So you Porsche guys don't mess with them.
no, that's true. And we'll see where it goes, right? Like it's only the future. We don't know. We can only buckle up and find out.
But as a business manager, especially of a large of a company that produces vehicles, which takes longevity, right? In your planning,
Yeah,
you got to be putting your chips on what you think human beings are going to want
yeah,
and need, and what you might be successful in achieving.
for sure.
Now, I don't know if Elon listens to your podcast.
I don't think so yet, but hey, next year, I'm telling you.
I bet you he's 15 steps ahead of us.
He definitely is. He always is.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, it's I love your optimism. It's totally true. If you're a business owner, you got to stay ahead of the game, right? That's the only way to win. Like you were in the speaker systems, right? Like with the audio industry, it took off, right? And you got in with those celebrities, you got in with those athletes, and then you advanced one step again once you started building all the SUVs out, and you're going to continue looking into the future, and that's for sure for a, even a bit as an owner, as a CEO, as a business manager, you need to be looking forward to see what the next trend's going to be and make sure you're ahead of the game for
Yeah,
sure.
you say trend. I would say need.
That's
The next need,
definitely,
right?
yeah, yeah,
Although I was into speakers and cars, really what I was into was people.
yeah,
What do they need?
yeah,
And
for sure,
in this endeavor that I've taken,
for sure.
what can I do for them? What are they telling me? What am I sensing that they would really get a lot of value from?
Hmm. For sure. No, that's I'm gonna write that one down after this. What do they need? No, it's true. It's a great theory, and it's not even a theory. It's just the truth. But
Yeah.
I have a question. Are there any upcoming projects or innovations at Becker Automotive that you guys are particularly excited about?
Well, it's kind of like, what's your favorite project? My next one,
Yeah.
um, the one we just finished.
Yeah.
They're all pretty exciting, and um, electric vehicles will be a bit of a challenge for us. We have to
For
change a
sure.
few things that we're doing. Um, the internet keeps evolving.
Yeah.
Um, technology keeps evolving. So staying on our toes with that.
Hmm.
Um, all right, I don't have an NDA with these guys, I don't think, so I can explain this a little bit. Maybe they'll even enjoy the punchline. This is just fun project, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I still think the autonomous cars might be interesting in the longer run, right?
Yeah.
And where do we go with our business, and where might we scale, and where might we get involved with companies that are larger than ourselves, that where
Hmm.
there might be some benefits in joint ventures. That we will get there, I suppose, eventually with your topics or your questions.
Yeah.
But here's a fun story. So I get a call from the marketing manager at a company called Virgin Galactic.
Okay.
You familiar with that
No,
company?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, Virgin Airlines, and
Okay.
Branson owns, right?
Yeah.
And he's a heck of an entrepreneur, and that airline is worth its weight in gold.
Yeah.
And the other things that he's done is he's created luxury resorts around the world that have a pretty meaningful experience quality. They're not meant to be just flashy. They're meant to be very earthy in a lot of respects, and very inviting and very down to earth. But they provide obviously a high quality of everything.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing he's been doing for quite a while, if you remember, is he drops a little rocket that they made off the bottom of a 747 jet, and it flies into low orbit.
Yeah.
Right? And what's cool about that, as opposed to going into higher orbit, where you got to wear, where it's a little, you can see the Earth is a circle, is that you're seeing the Earth as a curvature,
Yeah.
this big, beautiful Earth of ours, clouds and continents and whatnot, and you're looking down on it. And they shot off their rockets from underneath 747 square. Well, then they said, "Listen, this is a cool business concept, so let's go further." And I'm paraphrasing. I'm not their company, so
Yeah.
forgive me if I'm not explaining it right to this market executive. And so they've developed, instead of a 747, their own plane, jet plane,
Wow.
of course, that takes their rocket high enough to where when they drop their rocket, it can shoot into low orbit,
Yeah.
all with their own technology.
Yeah.
And they're going to launch this in 2026 for passenger astronauts. Now, currently, a ticket, from what I understand, and you can look at their website, costs $600,000.
Wow.
Well, that's less than Musk charged for
Yeah.
getting the other guys up there, right? So it's what a deal.
Yeah.
And the rocket that they've created holds 6 astronauts and a crew of 2.
Okay.
The astronauts are the paying guests, if you will.
Yeah.
And they're trained. They go through training and so forth. So they've created an airstrip in Arizona, I believe. And a luxury hotel is about an hour away. So the astronauts and their families come into the hotel, and they're trained. They have meals together, and they bring in their families. So there's like a bonding experience. It's more than just shoot me into space. It's what are we doing this for? Oh my God, and they're just wonderful. So they have to go from the hotel to the airstrip and back a few times for training before they actually blast off.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's going to get them from the hotel to the airstrip in a form of transportation that's going to allow the experience to be somewhat seamless. Well, a Becker Automotive Sprinter jet van, of course.
There you go.
And on it, they're still doing training. They're still doing, preparation. They want to keep it relaxed. They want to keep it luxurious enough to feel good.
Yeah.
The screens will be giving them more details. There'll be an instructor on board, or they call him a lead guy, who will be giving them, answering questions, giving them input. And so that hour there is important. The hour on the way back is a whole different experience. And they bring their families to the airstrip to see them land. I mean, it's going to be an entire event, to say the least.
For sure.
A life-changing, lifelong event. And as they grow the frequency of they're going to go from once a month to several times a month to several times a week.
Yeah.
The price of the experience is going to come down.
For sure.
That's their business model.
That's really cool.
So they've contacted us, no contract yet, about us providing them, potentially that transit for their guests. And so that's exciting. If to be a part of that in any way is flattering. To be considered.
Sure.
But I just need to get a discount on my ticket one day. You guys, what an experience to look down on.
You got to make that part of the contract.
I'm going to do, if they want their vans running correctly. Teasing aside, I think it's inspiring, and I don't know what comes from that, but I think that any human being having that experience would come back with some pretty good,
definitely,
ambitions and feelings about what's it all about. And,
for sure.
I think humanity can use more of that in a sense.
Definitely,
and so, I'm proud to be a part of it. That's just one fun project.
That's super cool. Yeah, that's quite the project, and a super cool vision for what they're launching as well.
Oh my gosh!
That's amazing.
It blows me away.
Yeah.
So you're gonna do what? You need what?
No, that's that's probably a first that you've heard, eh? Being in the yes, I'd say our otherworldly almost experience. Yeah, I bet. No, that's crazy. That's a super cool project, and I hope you get that contract, because that'd be cool, just to even be in contact with the company, and then you might have, like I said, make the contract part of your ticket, right? Like, that'd be a really cool experience, just working with that group as well.
They're wonderful people. Great experience. The engineers have come in, they've sat with me, they've gone through all of our work. There's been, they drilled down
awesome.
pretty good, so they do their homework, and they're great, but they're very serious and very talented folks.
I know, that's amazing. In the next 6 to 12 months, what are some of the biggest goals that you have for the company, and what do you think is going to hold you back from attaining those goals?
Well, I mean, the goals are continuing to do what we do as well as we can.
Yeah.
Restraints have to do with labor, actually.
Mm-hmm.
It takes high skill levels, and it takes dedicated people.
For sure.
And, not to put a damper on anything, but work ethic, high skill blue collar, There's a lot of skills and what do you call it? Internal driving
Yeah.
motivations
Yeah.
that for some reason feel a little lacking in the current environment. I'm not sure why that is. We wish there was a deeper pool of motivated folks that enjoyed, again, trade skills in a sense.
For sure.
Right? And that saw that as a worthy ambition. Can you make a good living at it? Sure. Can you become, an internet billionaire? Not necessarily.
Yeah.
So, what are the driving forces, the motivations, the visions of today's people graduating from high school? And where are they going? What are their motives? What are they doing? You have to be selective. I can't hire just anybody because, boy, they've got some China eggs that they're working with.
Yeah.
And then interpersonal relationships, et cetera, et cetera. That's the hardest thing. And so, where does that go? In my business, that's a limiting factor because I can't just put an ad in the paper and they line up and I've got them, right? I wish, but it becomes difficult. But we have a great group of people, treasure them. We take care of them the best I can. We need to be profitable. That isn't always easy because what we have to do has to be very exacting. When prices change, as they did through COVID, as they're doing now with tariffs and so forth, and I have fixed contracts to build cars. Your Canadian car parts are costing me more.
I bet.
And so everybody, there's a little trepidation going on, right?
Yeah.
About, and trepidation or uncertainty slows things down. Not only in making business decisions, but even wealthy people, it's been my observation for a lot of decades, various different recessions, crises, and whatnot. It's not that they feel that they're not going to have the means, but they tend to just freeze for a little bit to see what is going to happen. And I think they have relaxed a little bit more because they've seen the yo-yo effect of things.
Yeah.
So the certainty of being caught in a cost of good escalation is hopefully it's going to be a deal-making environment where everything actually gets more efficient.
Yeah.
Hopefully. But there's a little bit. So the key is if you say what's going to happen next year and a half, my hope is that it smooths out. Everybody's hope is, right?
For sure.
And that, there's more of a feeling of certainty and confidence going forward.
Yeah.
That will reflect in marketplaces, it'll reflect in investments, it'll reflect in people's attitudes. And stability in costs, is important. So we know how to price our things. We don't have supply chain issues.
For sure.
We don't. So those things are probably, foremost in terms of what I need to work with in planning going forward.
Yeah.
And we still have plenty. And if customers need our vehicle, there's not even a question. But, there's still a little bit of, in any crisis, of let's just wait a second.
Yeah, for sure.
And so it slows things down slightly. Not that a little slowdown isn't welcome, because sometimes we get too busy for our own good, which is normally the case.
Yeah.
And fall behind our timelines because we can't rush. We can't make quality is everything. So far so good, to say the least. However, we hope things smooth out and get a little less uncertain.
For sure. No, and I don't disagree with the tariffs and what Trump's trying to do. In my opinion, I see it as businesses are going to become a lot stronger as long as they make it through. And like you said, supply chain is going to be there because each country is going to stand on their own now. They're going to have warehouses in their own country. They're going to have manufacturing in their own country. And I think it's really going to help the processes of businesses and consumers because you're going to have the things there when you need it. And it's going to be probably cheaper to get it because you're not getting it from another country, right? You're getting it from your hometown country. That's how I see it. I think it's going to help the businesses that do last this next however long it's going to be. But I think it's really going to put a benefit to the companies that can stick it out.
Yeah. Well, it'll take a while for that to, sort itself out.
Yeah.
And it may be a combination, but yeah, there's some need to strengthen and fix trade imbalances and
For sure.
Bring down inflation and interest rates and
Yeah.
and create some stability for sure.
Yeah, I think I'm not opposed to it, but it is a little bit of a pain. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to make every country stronger. Not even just the United States, not even Canada, but every country that is part of it. I think it's going to make them stronger. But I don't want to speak on tariffs too much on the podcast. So
yeah, it's okay. It's all right. You're talking about what's the next year and a half, right?
Yeah.
As a business manager, right?
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying,
For sure.
For better or worse, it's going to be what it is. But
Yeah.
we hope that it levels out rather than becomes divisive or uncertain or
For
rocky.
sure. And it's
though we know
nice
we're gonna-
that companies go through these challenges too, because like COVID, it helps you look and think of different ways to do things, right? It's like, oh, I can't do this. It opens your mind a little bit to think in different ways and overcome some of these challenges. Makes your company stronger, makes you stronger, and a more intelligent individual for sure.
Indeed.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. If you could go back to when you started your company, what advice would you have given yourself?
Well, probably listen quicker, be less defensive, be more proactive in a sense. But I don't have any real regrets.
Yeah.
We went through a lot of knotholes, but I think where we've landed, is good solid ground.
For sure.
And I don't think there's much chance of disruption going forward.
Yeah.
There may be, more or less growth, and so forth, but we found a strong niche, and besides identifying and finding that niche, the niche recognizes us
Yeah.
for who we are in terms of quality and integrity.
For sure.
And those things take a while to penetrate the consciousness
Yeah.
of consumers. So, what else can I ask for? I mean, really.
Yeah. No, that's great for sure. And do you have any advice for upcoming entrepreneurs that really want to make an impact in the automotive space?
Well, entrepreneurs, period. I know we're talking, your podcast is about automotive, but, and there's tons of things in automotive,
Yeah.
parts supplies to car dealerships,
It's huge.
et cetera, et cetera. But it's about understanding your customers' needs,
Mhm.
listening to them, trying to fill that need with something that will make them say, yeah, that was a good value for me.
Yeah.
What I spent, was met or exceeded my expectations. And then when there's something that isn't perfect or didn't go right, getting into that space on a very personal basis
Yeah.
and letting them know that you care and finding a solution for them cements the deal. It bonds the customer base for repeat business and word of mouth. And I don't care how many ads you throw out. There is nothing like that. It takes time to grow momentum
Yeah.
in that space. But you want some musicians talking to other musicians who talk to Hollywood people, that talk to movie people, that talk to business people,
Yeah. For sure.
that talk to important people around the world. And so once you gain that marketplace, whether it's local or national or international, it doesn't matter, you get on solid ground.
Hmm. No, that's some great advice, and you touched on a lot of that throughout the podcast, and that was a lot of your process, and it's worked. You guys are super successful. You guys run an amazing company. You guys have amazing products. I was looking at your used vehicles there on your website, and I was trying to pick which one I'd buy. But I'm getting a brand new one, so no worries there. I'll get a custom built one. So.
There we go. That's good ambition. I like it.
So last question is, where can people find you on your website? Are you guys on social media?
Yeah, we
LinkedIn?
don't do a lot of social media. A little bit. Um, my son, who has a degree in media arts, is our sales manager.
Yeah.
Takes care of our, works with our webmaster, does all our videos, does all our photography. Probably sells more jobs than I want him to. Like, what? How do I do that? And so he's great. So yeah, a little bit on social media, but the home run area is our website
Yeah.
because on it we've invested a lot in imaging, right? Meaning not only explaining what we do, but a picture is 1,000 words. So of the probably several hundred galleries we have of vehicles we have done, and we've lopped off things we did 10 years ago already, there's more recent ones.
Yeah.
Usually when you click on a gallery, there's a video that
Mhm.
lasts, I don't know, 30, 45 seconds that walks you through the entire functions of the vehicle and as well as the beauty of it. And then there's
Cool.
still shots, so you can look at them. And there's, I don't say every color of the rainbow, but you can see the quality and the variety of the tastes
Yeah.
that our good customers have. And so they're beautiful. And there's
They
a
are.
lot of enjoyable things to see there. And then if you're so enticed and you want to start designing your new one, there's a bar that says pricing and options, and you click on that, and there's some drop-down lists depending upon the floor plan you choose.
Yeah.
Stretched or not stretched, van or yes, and you begin to say, yes, I want this, I want that, I want these tables, I want that refrigerator, I want that internet capacity, I want that mobile office capacity. No,
Yeah.
I'm a Mac man, I don't like PCs, I'm a PC guy, I don't like, I want, and you begin to build this up, and then we send you pricing back, and
Okay.
you begin to say, look at it, very itemized. And you can look at it in great detail, and you can say, what do I need that for? Cross that out. Or you
Yeah.
might say, yeah, this is great, but you forgot that. And so let's add that. And so it continues to go through, and we do that, and we break it down in cost between parts and labor.
Yeah.
So there's really good transparency. And there might be people that say, why is that so expensive?
Yeah.
And they deserve an explanation. And so forth and so on. So the idea is to be transparent, to allow give and take. It's not just package A, package B, package C, right?
Yeah.
It's like, as a human being, how do I make all of this work right for you?
Yeah.
And how do I, serve your need for understanding?
For sure.
Why, how, and how much? And time element, that's the worst thing. It's great, Howard, okay, go ahead and do this. Okay, it's going to take me 12 months to build it. What? Because the minute they make the decision that they want it, it's, I need it yesterday.
Yeah, for sure.
But again, our customers are used to ordering things that are special for them.
Yeah.
And they know they've got to wait on a plane, or they've got to wait on a boat, or they've got to wait on a home, or they've got to wait on a office, and they're building companies. So it's not all snap their fingers. So they get it.
Yeah.
Even
for sure.
though, they're all impatiently wonderful.
No, for sure. That's that's some, like I said, this whole podcast has been great. You've given us some great advice from everywhere, from your story of how you came up and what you're still using today. You're still using that same work motivation. But I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on and giving me your opinions, because this was a great chat.
So one last thing, okay?
Yeah,
I'd be
go ahead.
remiss if I didn't say. There's a third leg, right?
Yeah.
Listen, make sure you get involved and make sure they're happy.
Yeah.
If there's a problem, solve it. Third thing is employees, right? You've got to carry with you a feeling that you're doing something beneficial in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You can't be so focused
Mm-hmm.
on the customer and the business and the growth and the innovation and stuff that you're not considering the human
Yeah.
being. And understanding their lives, understanding that you're contributing to themselves and their families,
Mm-hmm.
maybe creating some stability in their life. I mean, divorce rates sometimes are attributed to financial insecurities.
Mm-hmm.
It drives a lot of problems. Children,
Yeah.
Are their kids? What can they do? Are they feel good about themselves? Do they feel good that their employer is caring about them? They can't get everything that they'd want because there's never enough to go around to cure everybody's every need. But do they feel that they're in a good place? Do you give them positive reinforcement? Do you listen to them?
Yeah.
Right? Huge third leg. Leave that third leg out, and the table falls over. There ain't no way. If there's a fourth leg, there probably is, but those three will get you some stability.
For sure.
But don't leave out the third one. It may be harder to think about that, but it's something you need to pay attention to big time.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Just adding more to the book that I'll have to write down, keep for my notes. But no, this whole podcast has been great. Like, you've given us so much of your knowledge, you've given us so much of your experience, and you've taken us through that experience with us by telling us your whole story, and it's super amazing how you give us the knowledge and then show us how you applied it and how it's still working today. Like, it's something that obviously works super well with how far you've come with your company, and it's amazing. It's a pleasure to have you on, and I'm so glad that we got to have this conversation.
My great pleasure.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Howard, so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
No worries.
Nice to meet you, and thank you for sharing my story with your audience.